Singer-songwriter John Denver was one of the world's best-known and best-loved performers. He loved to sing about the clear blue skies, country roads, and sunshine on his shoulder in his beloved Colorado. Among his hits during the early 70s to the 90s, Rocky Mountain High, Leavin' on a Jet Plane, Take Me Home, Country Roads, and Annie's Song. John Denver died after his light plane plunged into a California bay. In recognition of this best-loved performer, PBS will be airing a documentary, John Denver, Country Boy. John Denver's close friend and former partner in his environmental foundation, Tom Crum, joins me now. Tom, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Andrea, for having me.
So you knew John as a friend. You knew him on kind of a personal basis. So what was it about him that struck such a chord among so many people?
Well, I think it's numerous things. First of all, John, when he sang, if people really closely listened to it, there was a certain, he sang from his spirit. There was a certain resonance to his voice, I think, that hit us in our spirit, in our hearts. And I think that made a difference. I think anyone who consciously listens to his music finds that to be true.
Like a night in a forest, like the mountains in springtime.
I also think John lived his life from a tremendous amount of enthusiasm, a tremendous amount of commitment and heart. And I think that generates a lot of fans also. We would all like to have had the commitment and heart and spirit of John.
And as his celebrity was growing, he also became one of the first celebrities to really use his fame for activism. He got really involved in environmentalism and really preceded Bono and Sting and some of the people that we think of now. So what did that effort mean to him?
Oh, that meant everything. John was one of those celebrities who used his celebrity to make a difference. A lot of people make a difference hoping that it will increase their celebrity. John was the exact opposite. He always wanted to make a difference on this planet, and he took on major issues before celebrities took them on. The hunger issue, the environmental issue, nuclear proliferation, non-proliferation, space travel, human justice issues, just so much that he embraced. And I think his music reflects that. I think in the times that he was so very popular, when we were on the road together in the 70s, he was, I think, the second-ranked solo performer in the world. And it was amazing how people in that very time, you know, it was after Vietnam, it was the Nixon era, the impeachment. There was so much going on, so many difficulties, and I think John's music resonates when there's a lot of difficulties. If he were here today, I think his music and his writing would be extremely profound with his interest in the environment and climate change and nuclear nonproliferation and these issues. And the way he sings, it brings you back to your home, to your heart, to your spirit, and I think that makes a huge difference.
So given all of those, that breadth of accomplishments, what would you say is his legacy?
Well, I think his legacy continues to live on in any one of us who listens to his music and discovers that if we find a life that we love and we live a life that shows it, I think John's music and spirit and heart continues to sing within us and everywhere. So I really think that that's his legacy. He was the kind of man who lived such a committed life, and he sang in such a special way that brought us to our own hearts and spirit, that it will continue to live as long as we help a fallen person and live a life that shows it.
Rocky Mountain High, obviously, is one of his most famous and has often been associated with the high of the mountains, but also with marijuana. And now that marijuana is legal recreationally in Colorado, what do you think John's thoughts would be?
I think he'd say fabulous. You know, that song came from actually sitting in the Rocky Mountains at night around a campfire, watching meteor showers, just absolutely enthralled with it all. And, you know, people were passing a joint around then, and now they're doing it now legally. And I think John would be just have a smile about that.
Rocky Mountain High.
Did you ever expect him to add acting to his resume?
You know, John wanted to do everything. John had this enthusiasm. It was phenomenal. When you hiked with John, he'd be running around with his camera. You'd be walking. He'd be sort of running. And then every time he came to something, he'd say, oh, look at this, look at that. I want to do this. We come to a waterfall, and he'd have to jump in. Actually, he dove in. We'd all jump in. And he went head first in life. So John's desire to be an actor came from first his music, and then he got involved with some television specials and TV shows, and then acting was the next idea for him. And he, I think, would have loved to have taken that much further and done some very meaningful shows, films, just like so much of his music is so meaningful.
If he were to magically walk into the room right now, yours or mine, what would you say to him?
Well, where have you been, John? Tell me all about it. What do I have to look forward to? That would be the first one. Besides, I love you. I can't believe you're here now. Let's let me take my pad and pen and get right on hearing every word you say about where you've been and what you've seen. Wouldn't we all want to have that little bit of knowledge?
We would. Thank you so much, Tom, for lending your insight.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Andrea.